With the amount of classic films Disney has given us over the years, I've decided to rank every single one. I was pretty excited to start this as it was way different than any video I've ever done, and I got to rewatch so many movies I love, and got to watch some new ones for the first time. And let me say, it was not worth the effort. I'm not a professional critic or film analyst, this is very much just an average Joe's take on these movies. After asking some friends and family about their favorite Disney movies and characters, I noticed I was very off base when it comes to the general opinion. Both my favorite movie and favorite character were drastically different from what other people preferred. In most cases, it seems, people's favorite movies weren't about humans. Instead, it seems people love movies where it's either told from an animal's perspective, or an animal plays the largest role or has the biggest impact on the plot. Though, sometimes instead of an animal, it was an alien in Stitch's case, or a robot like Baymax. Pretty much just not humans. Accounting for the fact that my personal favorites are pretty different, I wanted to make this video feel fair and unbiased, so to ensure that, I've made rules. First, I had to watch every single Disney movie in order, as well as I had to do it in the span of 1 month, so no movies can unfairly benefit from nostalgia or recency bias. And another step I've taken to make sure I rank everything fairly, I broke every movie into 5 different categories. Musical numbers, if applicable. Movies that choose not to use musicals won't be penalized for it. The plot, the characters, how unique the movie is, and finally, rewatch potential. Each of these 5 categories are given a grade from F to S, and then the final grade of the film is the average score of all 5 categories combined. Now on to the movies. The rules for what films qualify are simple. They must be a feature film, so no shorts like Steamboat Willie, and it must be exclusively Walt Disney Animation Studios. So no Pixar collabs and no straight to DVD releases like Lion King 2. And lastly, it must be at least majority animation. Alright, enough explaining, enough messing around. Let's just get on to the rankings. Here is every single Disney movie from 1937 to 2022 ranked. To start us off is the trailblazer for Disney's formula. Though this movie is dated in some areas such as The Kiss, overall this movie aged extremely well. They got the goofy side character to be likable without overdoing it and making him annoying with Dopey. They had a good foil for Snow White in the form of both the Queen and, to a lesser extent, Grumpy. But by the way, let me just say, the magic mirror was crazy for saying Snow White is more beautiful than the Queen. Lastly, what really impressed me was how there was no real heroic protagonist to save Snow White from the Queen, because none was needed. The downfall of the Queen was her own greed, and being so consumed with what she didn't have. To show how a person can destroy themselves over something so petty was done so beautifully, and overall, I have to give this movie an A.
Real boy.
A real boy. It's my wish. It's come true.
Pinocchio, another Disney classic. Yet, I feel they lost the magic that they used in Snow White. The subtlety was gone, and the symbolism being spelt out and being too on the nose. Get it? And the characters just weren't really likable. Pinocchio was infuriatingly selfish, Geppetto kicked his cat around, and Jiminy Cricket was nothing more than a commentary tool, and not really a character in himself. Also, the plot had so many weird holes and unexplained circumstances, like Geppetto set out to find Pinocchio. How did he end up in the stomach of a whale at the bottom of the sea? How thorough was the search? Also, when he went out to the camp and started turning into a donkey, I get the message, but why was it happening? There was never an explanation on how it occurred. Like Pinocchio was made real by an angel. We have a reason. The donkey thing was just dumb. I gotta give this movie a D.
Mr. Stokowski,
Mr. Stokowski!
Fantasia. This was such a unique project, but also a 2-hour long, boring one. It's basically a 2-hour long music video being broken up by a man, explaining everything you're going to see before you actually see it, so nothing can actually catch you by surprise or excite you. Also, the animation wasn't crazy enough to keep me entertained, so aside from being unique, there was nothing really that special about this, and so I also am putting it in D tier. Dumbo is such a cute movie with a positive message about loving yourself for your differences, and my only issues with this movie were the fact that when customers were abusing the elephants, what did the owner do? Did he kick those people out? No, he beat the elephant's ass with a whip. Also, the birds did not age well and came off very offensive. Oh, and on a funny note, everyone calls him Dumbo, but that was just a rude nickname given to him by his bullies. His name is Jumbo Jr., so all of his friends who call him Dumbo are like accidentally bullying him. This is a B tier movie. I love Bambi. I think it is such a good story, from being a baby to their awkward stages as a kid to being a teenager who grew up earlier than they were really ready for because they lost their parent at such a young age, to then get to see them be reunited with a childhood friend, quickly becomes a love interest was a cool storyline, as well as the final result, getting to see Bambi grow into the man he always looked up to and admired the most, was done beautifully. And my only complaint about this movie was it was so short that it felt like, since it had so much to show in such a short amount of time, none of the parts got enough time to really stretch their legs. But other than that, I think this movie was done so well. Also, shout out my man Bambi for being terrified to talk to women, my shy, relatable king. This movie gets an A tier. I seriously love Bambi. What to say about Saludos Amigos? It's a commentary on how cool llamas are and that there are nice pots you can buy in South America, I guess. There was no plot, there were no real characters. They have Donald Duck, but he doesn't actually talk, and he's just used as a prop. Like, this movie was just a 40-minute long nothing burger.
Now we're 3 gay caballeros.
So, the Three Caballeros is basically the same thing as Saludos Amigos. It's a commentary on South America, but this one was given more variety when it comes to topics, and the topics were a bit more interesting, but they dragged it out so much that even though the topics were more interesting, it was so drawn out that it like kind of offset and was still just as unenjoyable as Saludos Amigos. I'm not sure on the reasoning on why, but Make Mine Music has been vaulted by Disney, so it's not available anywhere. And as I can't watch it, I can't rank it. Okay, I know this is gonna sound super hypocritical, but I'm really tired of this commentary trend that Disney was doing. I want to hear characters speak, not be spoken for. But aside from that, this movie was broken up into multiple short stories, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. It was kind of interesting, but the best part of the movie was definitely Donald Duck, because when him and all of his friends were starving, he was the only one willing to eat their cow. And then once they were down at the dinner table and everybody was sharing these tiny portions of food and everybody was acting content and happy with what little they had, he just starts eating plates and like loses his mind. And then they finally calm him down and he keeps freaking out. He starts hanging from the roof and speaking in tongue. I mean, he goes full on ape shit. I was genuinely amused. Like, it deserves a B tier.
Go and get them apple trees a-growing. There's a lot of work out there to do.
Melody Time had some charm to it, but it was another commentary, and I just end up repeating myself if I talked about it more, saying things I've said about the previous commentary movie, so I'm just gonna move along. This is another commentary broken up into 2 stories, but instead of props, it had actual characters. The first story is about an unbelievably selfish toad who does nothing but bring trouble to his friends who just want to help him. And there's multiple times where he was put in a spot to grow as a character and acknowledge his flaws, but instead he just didn't care and kept breaking the law. And with that, kept ruining other people's lives. Also, he was found innocent on one of the many crimes he committed, or, well, this time he was only accused. And everyone began apologizing to him, acting like they were wrong about him, and they just got the wrong idea about him, and he was actually a good guy, but no. He still committed so many other awful acts, and they're just forgiven because this one time he was innocent. Then the second story is about 2 men competing for the same woman. Once again, we're given a very selfish main character who doesn't really grow, but I don't know. I was definitely less annoyed with this main character, but overall, it's a D tier.
One, of course. Bippy, boppy, boo.
Oh, good old Cinderella. I think this movie does a really good job establishing the villains because there were scenes that were so genuinely infuriating. I hated these characters. I also like how the animals in this had personality and dialogue along with humans, because with all these movies so far, it's been one or the other usually, and I thought that was a cool touch. One thing I didn't like about this movie was how when Cinderella left the ball, they were gonna find her using her glass slipper, see whose foot it fit, but like, that's not how shoes work. They don't fit one person only. Also, when everything else disappeared, the dress, the carriage, why did her slippers stay? That didn't make sense to me. But overall, I think it was a good movie, but not a great.
Oh, thank you.
If you stay long enough, we might have a battle.
Upon rewatching Alice in Wonderland, I forgot how magical this film feels. The way nothing makes sense because nothing has to, it's so fun to watch. And it wasn't a scary or over complex level of nonsense either. It was an enjoyable silliness. Like, the whole sequence with the talking doorknob, the treat to make Alice grow, the potion to make her shrink, the fact Alice spent so long trying to get the key just to end up not needing it and getting through another way was just another example of them subverting our expectations and showing us how nothing is what it seems. The way this story plays out, I truly don't believe something like this can be replicated. I think Alice in Wonderland is a one of one.
Off to Neverland.
Now we got Peter Pan, and first things first, I love Tinkerbell. She's an adorable, hot-headed fairy who don't take no mess from anyone. Also, I think it's funny how much beauty standards have changed over the years, with Tinkerbell becoming insecure after noticing she has large thighs. But aside from Tink, there's a lot this film lacks in. The fact the Lost Boys hunt down Injuns for fun, every single woman is shown as being homicidal due to jealousy. It's funny once, not when it's the standard for everyone. Also, in my very humble and correct opinion, Mr. Smee was the goofy character trope done poorly. It did not play well. So this movie gets about a B. Next up, we have Lady and the Tramp. And I love dogs. People love dogs. So making a movie about dogs was a genius idea. I like how we got to meet our two main characters in their own environment first and got to form our opinions on them separately instead of deciding how we feel about them depending on how they interacted with one another. But unfortunately, Disney can't stop being racist for 5 minutes. So this movie gets a B. Up next, we have Sleeping Beauty, and this movie is just a worse Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
He copied my whole flow! Word for word, bar for bar!
The villain's motives made no sense, and the fact that she was put into a coma because she touched a spinning wheel, and not even because she was poisoned, I found that to be pretty dumb. But I do have to give this movie credit for doing the kiss way better. The fact that Aurora had already met the prince and they had romantic feelings for each other, and it wasn't just a stranger kissing a passed out woman in the forest. I mean, big improvement. But aside from getting the kiss better, I just found it to be worse, so it gets a C.
Hey, get down.
Once again, they killed it by giving us dogs as characters to root for. Also, Roger is the man. The fact they made him a musician so the musical numbers are an actual part of his character was a really cool way to do it. Plus, he's a certified hater. He was making fun of Cruella before she arrived, and then when she got there, he was upstairs, and every time she talked, he started blowing a trumpet into the floor as loud as he could to drown her out. And then his big break as an artist was a song about how awful Cruella de Vil is. Like, this man gets an A for his generational hating. I'm actually inspired. Now, The Sword and the Stone. The voice acting for Kay was so weird. He very much felt like he was reading a script and wasn't actually a character. Like, I could tell this was an actor doing a job. An actor who sounded like he did not want to be there. Also, Kay saw literal magic occur in front of his very eyes, and he just didn't care. Just no reaction. What? Such a weird character. The best part of this movie was definitely Merlin. He was like a goofy grandpa type character, but also the magic was just really cool. But other than that, there were reused jokes, voices not matching characters' mouths, and a very weak ending.
Now give me a big bear growl. Scare me.
This is the worst main character Disney has ever given us. Mowgli is so unlikable and annoying. He nonstop told everyone he doesn't need help and pushed everyone away, just to then immediately start screaming for help anytime anything sort of dangerous happened. That was his entire character. It was so obnoxious. If it weren't for Baloo and Bagheera, plus the scary atmosphere that filled every scene Shere Khan was mentioned in, this movie would have been an F tier. Also, why make jazz and scatting, two predominantly African American music genres, be performed by monkeys? You knew what you were doing, Disney.
When everybody wants to be a cat.
Okay, now that we've reached the Aristocats, I gotta be honest, I genuinely sympathize with the villain. He has taken care of this old woman who has no family for so long, just to hear that in her will, she is leaving all of her money to her cats, and not only that, she expects him to keep taking care of her pets after she dies. I would be furious too. But the cats in this movie are actually likable, which is good because, like dogs, cats are beloved pets. And O'Malley being the most likable character and having the same voice actor as Baloo, that just makes sense to me. Also, the writers thought the racist Siamese cats were funny enough to make another appearance, and Yeah, I'll be honest, I disagree.
You're better than Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, he says. Wow, wait.
Phil Harris strikes again. The man who voiced Baloo and O'Malley is now Little John. The man found his niche with Disney and owned it. I also really enjoyed how they showcased the faults in a hereditary monarchy, with the king being super incompetent, and he's only in that position because of who his parents are. But they ran the incompetent joke into the ground, making every single soldier useless. If you keep telling the same joke over and over again, it loses its punch. Still, pretty good movie. Do not watch this movie if you are not a baby. The only upside was the uniqueness and the creative fourth wall breaks. Other than that, this movie was made for actual toddlers. Also, Pooh is such an annoying character. This movie's bad.
Sure wish we'd have taken the train.
The Rescuers was a super cute movie. I also found it cool how the mice had developed a society with their own economy and their own established organizations, and birds acting as planes and using rooftops as an airport, dragonflies with leaves being used as speedboats. It was cool. The only downsides to this movie was the fact that the high-class woman falls in love with the lower-class man trope has quickly gotten played out in recent movies, and the villain's motive was kinda dumb. Also, the fact Penny asked why they didn't bring the police since humans clearly could understand the mice was a really good point. It was also funny how they were just kinda like, oh yeah, why didn't we tell them? But overall, I give it a B. I like this movie.
Why, it's you.
I was really not looking forward to rewatching this movie based solely on the fact, as a kid, I cried so hard at that scene. And though it's still an emotional film, I was able to hold it together this time. Getting to watch a fox and a puppy become friends is such a feel-good story. Although it does get more complex, much of the movie was about two unlikely pals. Sadly, many of the characters felt very weak, but we did get the return of a familiar voice, the one and only Pat Butt Ram. Another B tier. I hope you guys are noticing the trend. I want to talk a lot about this movie, but since there's so much I want to talk about, I'm actually considering making a video on just this one movie alone, so I won't go super in depth here. But I'm genuinely surprised I've never heard of this movie before. I was so impressed. This is a probably hot take, but I don't care. I think it's really good.
Actually, it's elementary, my dear Dawson.
The Great Mouse Detective just felt like a less fleshed out version of The Rescuers with weaker characters. This is the first Disney movie that completely knocked it out of the park with their musicals. I loved the song playing in the intro, while we get beautiful shots of 1980s New York and... oh no. Moving on! Once Upon a Time in New York City, Why Should I Worry, Perfect Isn't Easy, Good Company, Streets of Gold, all bangers. We also get a movie of cats and dogs, which is such a win-win. Cheech Marin absolutely killed his role and made Tito a seriously funny character. Another thing that made this movie really hit my feels was how much Fagin cared about Dodger and the gang, along with his immediate acceptance and love for Oliver. Seeing a man so beaten down on his luck and living in a broken down boat that doesn't even have a bed or a table be so optimistic that when he looks around he doesn't see misfortune, but instead 6 separate reasons to smile every day, genuinely warms my heart. I also was so invested during the scene on the dock where Fagin met Jenny, and you see two people displaying a scary level of desperations for two very different reasons, and one of them was going to have to lose. It was seriously such a scary scene. I'd be lying if I say I didn't absolutely love this movie, but fair is fair, and I can't hand out brownie points to my favorites, so it's getting a B based on the criteria, but me personally, if it were up to me, it would be higher. Now, I might be crazy in saying this, but I personally think this is the first huge Disney name I got to watch for this video. The Jungle Book and movies like that are well known, but The Little Mermaid is an undeniable icon when it comes to Disney, and honestly of animation in general. The visuals of this movie genuinely took me off guard, as they were so vibrant and warm, and unlike anything Disney had done prior. The musical numbers were fantastic classics with Under the Sea and Part of Your World. And Ariel is such a lovable, adorable main character. This movie does sadly struggle with uniqueness when it comes to someone falling for a person of another world. It's a very overplayed concept in Disney movies, and some of the characters were extremely weak, like Ariel literally throwing away her entire life to chase after a person she met one time. But overall, I think the movie is really good and deserving of its iconic status, and I'm gonna give it an A tier.
Here we go. Ow, this is cold.
Alright, now the Rescuers Down Under, I'll be honest, they just redid the Rescuers, but worse. And the kid that they go to save is Australian, but he is the only Australian resident to not have an Australian accent in the movie. He sounds American. I don't get it. They gave other characters Australian accents, but the kid, just nope. I think they should have left the Rescuers alone. The first one was really good. This just felt lazy. So we're immediately back to the opposites attract trope, which in this case is straight up zoophilia. Our main character Belle is treated as some strange social outcast because she reads books. Yeah. The deuteragonist of our story is the Beast, who is such a jerk. The way he treated Belle's father, to then keeping Belle as a prisoner and trying to force her to love him, dude is bad news. Meanwhile, her other potential love interest is Gaston, a cocky, chauvinistic hunter who is so self-absorbed, he arranged a wedding for him and Belle without ever telling her because he assumed she'd be so excited he's even giving her the time of day. I've never seen someone with worse dating luck. Eventually, she falls in love with her abusive captor because he kills some wolves to save her, but he did it so he could still make her fall in love with him, not because it was the right thing to do. By the way, Gaston is literally a hunter. The only factor separating Beast and Gaston is Beast was closer, so he saved Belle first. But he was only closer because he was keeping her prisoner in his tower. Also, the whole point of the movie was to break the curse Beast had, and the reason he was cursed was because he turned away an enchantress when she took the form of an old woman, but then he begged forgiveness when she transformed into a beautiful woman. But if the lesson he was supposed to learn was that you should love someone for who they are, not what they look like, he didn't learn his lesson. Belle fell in love with him despite how he looked. She loved him for who he was on the inside. Beast just got to date an attractive woman. It was okay. And that's being generous.
I'll go in.
No!
What? What?
I'll be honest, I don't love Aladdin, and I bet you can guess why. This trope is insanely overused at this point. I mean, A Whole New World is basically copying the homework of A Part of Your World and changing it up a bit so the teacher doesn't notice. This movie also had animation that caught me off guard for looking so bad. The Sultan couldn't even pronounce the name of his own god. Thankfully, Genie and Jasmine are such good characters, with Jasmine easily being one of my favorite Disney princesses, that they saved this movie to the best of their ability. It's Lion King. Everybody loves Lion King. It's such a good story, from being a baby to their awkward stages as a kid to being a teenager who grew up earlier than they were really ready for because they lost their parent at such a young age, to then get to see them be reunited with a childhood friend, quickly becomes a love interest was a cool storyline, as well as the final result, getting to see Bambi grow into the man he always looked up to and admired the most, was done beautifully. If you didn't notice, I just replayed exactly what I said about Bambi, and it applied perfectly. Rewatching all of these movies, it seriously surprised me how much Lion King had ripped off Bambi. And uniqueness being one of the 5 factors I ranked these movies, I don't feel comfortable giving Lion King higher than a B. Okay. Of course I'm kidding. Even with it struggling in uniqueness, the amazing variety of characters and the amount of amazing songs that have become classics easily carries the lack of uniqueness in this film. I mean, come on man, it's Hakuna Matata. Lion King is S tier. I mean, I don't get what they were even going for. John Smith is just straight up openly racist to Pocahontas' face and calls her and her people savages, and she's just like, oh my god, my quirked up white boy, I love him. Also, despite it being established at the start of the film that Pocahontas wanted to travel the world and that was her whole goal, and how she didn't want to settle down and marry Kocoum, all of her character was abandoned when at the end of the movie, even though she wanted to go with John Smith, she decides her place is with her family and gives up on her dream. Colors of the Wind was a banger though, but Colors of the Wind couldn't carry this movie. Okay, first things first, Esmeralda is fine, dude. She literally caused Frollo to sing and perform an entire song and dance about the fact she made him so horny he thought he was going to hell. That's not a joke, it's literally in the movie. I can see why Disney has stayed away from an Indian princess so far, because Esmeralda is a character who's basically impossible to top. She's not only the most beautiful woman Disney has ever created, but she was so cool and such a strong character as well. And her relationship with our main character, Quasimodo, was really unique to me, because even though he was romantically interested in her, she ends up with someone else, and he respects that and is okay with the platonic friendship. Having never seen or heard anything about this movie, I was super impressed with my first watch through. From the music to the characters, it was such a fun viewing experience. Hunchback of Notre Dame is such a good movie.
Continue to grow. Now that's more like it.
So let me first talk about what I dislike about this movie. Hercules becomes super annoying as a character whenever he's around Megara by being flustered. Like, I get it, it can be funny when a guy gets flustered by a woman's beauty, but they really overdid it with him. Other than that, I have nothing bad to say about this movie. Megara's character arc was nice to watch and felt genuine. Hercules' sacrifice to give up on being a god because his happily ever after wasn't some place, it was someone. It had a likable and funny villain, and the cherry on top, Danny DeVito reference! I love Danny DeVito. I got so happy realizing he was voicing Phil. This movie gets an A tier. I unironically listen to the Mulan songs all the time. Reflection is so beautiful. Make a Man Out of You always reminds me of a funny moment I had with someone I used to be really close friends with. And A Girl Worth Fighting For not only is a fun song, but it lets us look into the personalities of the rest of our cast, while also giving the scene a fun feeling, just to quickly go into a drastic mood change to catch the viewer off guard. And it was done so well. I think Mulan is such an amazing, flawed, and human character. When it comes to making her family proud, she always does her best, which is the most anyone can do. Mushu is such a fun sidekick to have around, as well as he's not just a goofy comedic relief, he's shown to be caring and tries to help Mulan as much as he can. And his snarky defensive jokes aren't just silly jokes, but a reflection of the personality he's had to develop to protect himself. All of his peers and the ancestors constantly looking down on him, making jokes at his expense, has instead of breaking him down, built him into the most self-confident character in the movie, which I loved. Mulan is S tier. Someone needs to tell Phil Collins this is a silly movie about a man who thinks he's a gorilla. Why did he go so unbelievably hard with the music? Also, the attention to detail in this movie was seriously impressive, because gorillas walk on their knuckles of their 4 fingers, but seeing as humans and gorillas are extremely different, it's impossible for people to do the same. That's why if you pay attention, you notice Tarzan walks differently than the rest of the gorillas. He has to use his thumbs to support himself. Also later in the movie, Jane asks Tarzan if he can teach her how to talk to gorillas, and he teaches her a phrase, and then when asked what she just said, he tells her she said, "Jane, stay with Tarzan." Then at the end of the movie, Jane swims back to the island, and all the gorillas surround her, looking very confused, and she makes the same exact noises she did earlier in the film to everyone's excitement. I found that super cool, because if you just tell people you're speaking monkey, you can make whatever noises you want and say it means anything. But to stay consistent was cool. And also, wouldn't feel right not mentioning the fact that Jane was the most adorable character we've had since Ariel. She just had such a preciousness about her. Tarzan is also getting thrown in the A tier.
Hello and welcome to Fantasia 2000. It's been more than 60 years.
This is the same thing as Fantasia, just with updated songs and more impressive visuals. And a considerably shorter runtime, which I appreciate. And they talk about how they had Ride of the Valkyries, which was clearly going to be the coolest of the segments, and then just cut it. But overall, this was still an improvement from the first Fantasia. I mean, who doesn't like dinosaurs? Other than that though, there's not really much to brag about when it comes to this movie. I mean, Zinni shares a lot of the traits I liked about Mushu, and the story isn't bad, but it also isn't good. This is just okay.
By the way, you're fired.
Fired? What do you mean, fired?
This is the first movie they went full-on comedy route. They had such a proven formula, I think it must have been scary for them to go in such a different direction. But it was so worth it. This movie is a classic. The fourth wall breaks, Kronk's general absurdness, like being able to speak squirrel and having an angel and a devil on his shoulder. Yzma was really funny as well. The way they make scenes actually feel awkward instead of the over-the-top, unrealistically awkward was super funny, giving us a really unlikable main character who we ended up having no choice but to like was really well done. To step out of their comfort zone and knock it out of the park like this, well done. Especially considering the fact this is their third movie released this year. Another A-tier movie.
I got you 4 basic food groups: beans, bacon, whiskey, and lard.
My only complaint about this movie is the fact that for the first hour, every female character has the same running joke that they're just rude. It's funny once, maybe twice, not when it keeps happening. But Audrey does grow as a character, and in fact she even lowers her guard and allows herself to be vulnerable to Milo. That causes the rest of the crew to follow her lead, and we are given a chance to become attached to them. And then there's Vincenzo, who is genuinely hilarious. He's the first character in these Disney movies to actually make me laugh out loud multiple times.
You didn't just drink that, did you? That's not good. That's nitroglycerin. Don't move, don't breathe, don't do anything except pray, maybe.
But even after all the nice things I have to say about the characters, especially Kita, I have a lot of nice things to say about her, if you give me. The characters aren't even the best part of this movie. Not even close. The adventure is so exciting. From seeing giant vehicles no one has ever heard of before, to fighting a giant Leviathan who is shrouded in mystery because they look to be a robot yet behave like they're alive. We see them encounter things they have no idea how to deal with, and the excitement they feel when they reach a world that was thought to be nothing more than a myth. Without a shadow of a doubt, the strongest storyline Disney has ever created. Atlantis is S tier, argue with your mama, I don't care.
Hey, that's mine!
We arrive at probably the most beloved Disney character. A main deuteragonist who is actually a villain whose only purpose is destruction. We get to see someone who is created damaged and hurt be thrown into a broken family also full of hurt people, where everyone is just trying to do their best to get back to a normal that Stitch has never even known. There are times where I got genuinely annoyed at how much harder Lilo and Stitch made Nani's life for no reason, which resulted in easily avoidable problems that ended up being the plot of the movie. I found that to be a bad way to get to the point. I give Lilo and Stitch a B. So this movie is initially set up as another adventure-focused movie like Atlantis, only that's not what they end up focusing on. The movie focuses much more on the relationships between the crew, from the captain all the way down to the boy who's just the cook's assistant. At first, I was upset that they gave away the fact that the chef is the cyborg villain referenced earlier, because I thought it'd be a cool way to keep the viewer guessing, but I quickly got over it because what they did with his character was so much better. Silver tries manipulating Jim to gain his confidence, so then it's easier to catch him off guard and betray him once he gets to Treasure Planet. The only problem with his plan was the fact that Silver is human. As Jim opens up and reveals his true self to Silver, showing he's more than just a cocky kid, but is instead someone who just wants to prove to someone, anyone, he's good enough, just this one time, Silver finds himself rooting for the kid. What was initially a ruse quickly develops into a mentoring father-son-like relationship, where Silver has grown soft and truly cares for Jim. Unfortunately, other relationships didn't feel as earned and were kind of forced, and the movie outside of the relationship between our protagonist and antagonist wasn't too special. So, it gets a B.
No!
This movie is a personal favorite film from my childhood. The funny Moose Brothers, how beautiful the spirits look, and the way the movie focused on the relationship between 3 brothers hit home for me. Denahi trying to stop Kenai from killing the bear that killed Sitka because it's wrong, just to then himself try to hunt down the bear when he believes it killed Kenai, that hurt his character. Him transforming into a monster and living in a crazy new world were both already used plots, so the uniqueness took a hit, And overall, we got another movie that ends in the B tier. B for Brother Bear. Yeah, this was a stinker. Plot being put together by coincidence, making the three main characters annoying, and giving the villain such a ridiculous motive combined to make this movie pretty bad.
What is it? What's going on?
The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
This might be the worst father in all of Disney. This guy sucks. I'll be honest, aside from Abby and Fish, the characters weren't very good. Abby was really the only one who had a fleshed out personality, and Fish was just funny. The music carried this movie pretty hard, as the songs were actually really fun to listen to. So, Chicken Little gets a C for chicken.
What?
This is another personal favorite of mine that I've loved since I was a kid. I have very mixed emotions on the villain. On one hand, as a kid, Goob is genuinely hilarious. I love young Goob. As an adult, I find his character considerably less funny, and I certainly am not threatened by him as a villain. This movie really didn't have much of a forward-moving plot, which I think is fine. Instead of an objective everyone's racing for, there's a lot of downtime where you just meet everyone. This is more of a feel-good movie than anything else, but yeah, B tier is getting kind of overrun. Now, Bolt had a very unique premise: an ordinary dog who believes he's a superhero being thrown into the real world, but unfortunately, it took him way too long to realize he's not a superhero, and he ended up just being annoying for a really long time. Also, they had Chloe Grace Moretz voice Penny in one scene, then for the rest of the movie, it's Miley Cyrus. What an absolutely ridiculous amount of star power used to voice one character, which they did nothing with because they had Miley Cyrus voice her, yet they did no musicals.
That's new.
Oh my god, the character development, the music, the lovable people we meet. I mean, this movie has it all. We get a charismatic jerk who is extremely likable, a strong female character who does whatever it takes to achieve her own dream, never needing somebody else's handouts, an amazing supporting cast with a wide range of personalities, all of who are extremely endearing. This is the closest any movie has gotten to S tier without actually making it. The magical kiss being played out was the only thing holding it back. But I mean, it easily could be S tier.
Well, tell that to my frying pan.
Disney entering the 2010s with a banger. This movie made it very hard to not be biased because of Flynn Rider. I mean, white guy, brown hair, brown eyes, bad facial hair, and he's a jerk who has things just kind of work out for him. He me for real. But aside from him, this movie does a lot of things I really like. The main character, Rapunzel, is such a good character who has her own desires but also makes sure to consider other people's feelings. I also can't help but think of my favorite ex whenever she starts acting bratty. She brings the best out of other people, as seen in the bar scene, when she's surrounded by nothing but ruffians and criminals. Normally, you'd assume the main characters are in trouble. Instead, she knows everyone is still human, and instead of fighting, she causes everyone to begin singing about their dreams. The music in this movie was so good, and the ending was so touching in the end of a great character arc for my main man.
Did I ever tell you I've got a thing for brunettes?
Me for real! This movie is in the same boat as The Princess and the Frog, being held back by already used themes or tropes. So, again, it's an A tier that was really close to S.
A simple hello would do.
The last 30 minutes of this movie is all based around the joke about them misreading a letter, but it doesn't make sense because anyone capable of reading is too old to enjoy this. Again, Winnie the Pooh movies are just made for babies.
You are a bad guy, but this does not mean you're a bad guy.
This is kind of a shocker, but this is a movie about video games that actually wasn't awful. It was cool seeing characters from different games interact and mingle. I also love how Felix was beloved by everyone in his game for 30 years, and he stayed single. Left his game for 5 minutes, found a woman who could kick his ass, and immediately fell in love. The reveal of King Candy being Turbo, and the fact Penelope wasn't a glitch was honestly a really cool twist. But dude, she is not fair. That is not fair! I would be so mad if that happened to me in a game. Also, her asking Ralph to stay with her in the castle maybe got me a little teary-eyed. So what? Who cares? Shut up. No one asked you. It's going in B.
Do you want to build a snowman?
We arrive at the formerly highest grossing, but still most iconic Disney movie to ever be released. This may be surprising, but I've never actually seen Frozen before making this video. Not because I had anything against it, I just wasn't that interested. And after seeing the hype around this film for the last decade, and finally watching it for myself, I get it. The reveal of Prince Charming being a villain, the unique idea on focusing on a loving sisterhood instead of a more traditional romantic style of love, the amazing songs, the depths characters were able to display. Yeah, this checked all the boxes. I do have 2 Frozen hot takes. No pun intended. I do not like Olaf. I think he is comedic relief done wrong. To make him such a focal point of much the plot, when he's just a dopey character who is always confused, was a bad idea. His kind of character should always be relegated to a less important side character. And second hot take, I believe Let It Go is the greatest song Disney has ever made for multiple reasons. First of all, it just sounds so beautiful. I mean, duh. Secondly, the song acts as a tool to show Elsa's growth. Normally, a Disney song is about a character before, during, or after their development arc, and it shows where that character is at in that particular moment. With Let It Go, we got to watch Elsa grow. Between her body language and the lyrics, it was done so beautifully. She starts so quiet, almost whispering. She's listing the rules she's had to follow her whole life, while looking scared and holding her arms close to her body, showing she's felt boxed in her whole life because of her fear of her powers being discovered. She then begins to sing at a much higher volume, throws her glove away to show she's no longer afraid of her powers, and she removes her cape, and her body language really begins to change to show she no longer feels cornered or afraid. After this, she sings the line, "I'm free," and her voice grows even higher along with her confidence. She now not only accepts her powers, but is actually beginning to feel empowered by them, showcased by her making a staircase where she literally and metaphorically reaches new heights. And finally with the line, "I'm never going back, the past is in the past," we see her truly free herself and become the woman she wants to be. By this point, she's practically screaming the lyrics, and she no longer resembles the scared girl who just followed the rules who she was at the beginning of this song. Absolute masterpiece, both song and visuals. Frozen is S tier.
This is what I've been working on.
With Big Hero 6, let's just go ahead and acknowledge it. Aunt Cass. They knew what they were doing. Also, Go-Go doesn't get enough hype because of Cass, but she's not only attractive, but so cool. But aside from being attracted to some of them, the characters of this film weren't very good. Let's meet Tadashi, the older brother to our main protagonist hero. He wants his little brother to use his gift to make a life for himself instead of wasting his time using it to scam underground robot fighters. So, to encourage him, he takes him to his college where he meets the rest of our main cast, starting with Gogo, but I already talked about her. Next, we meet Wasabi, the goofy comedic relief. Then, we're introduced to Honey Lemon, the goofy comedic relief. Now you may be wondering, why such weird names? Gogo, Wasabi? Well, they're from Fred. Fred being our goofy comedic relief. After meeting the other students, Tadashi then introduces Hiro to his invention, Baymax, the goofy comedic relief. Making every character comedic relief makes them less so comedic relief and instead just turns the overall movie into a lazy comedy. That causes Big Hero 6 to land B tier.
And I am just a dumb bunny, but we are good at multiplying.
Jason Bateman is one of my favorite actors, so him being the deuteragonist gave this movie personal brownie points for me. Also, it's cool Tommy Chong voiced the character, since Cheech Marin has done voice acting work for Disney previously. Other than liking some of the actual actors and making a Breaking Bad reference, this movie didn't give me much to love, but it also had nothing in it that I hated. And I did actually find some of the jokes really funny. So overall, I think it was a good movie, just not great. Seeing as this was my personal favorite coming into this, I was very nervous to watch it because I was so critical of everything to avoid being biased. Yet, it turns out I love this movie because it's an amazing movie. The music was great, the visuals were seriously beautiful, the characters we met were endearing, and their personalities and actions always accurately reflected one another. So nothing was ever out of character, or made no sense. To have an adventure between a man and a woman where neither of them falls in love was very unlike Disney, and I loved it. And I'm such a sucker for stories like the one in Maui's song, someone stealing fire from the underworld so we can cook food, or harnessing the breeze so people can have wind in their sails. Those stories have such a charm to me. They also nailed having a funny bad guy, and the reveal that the main villain was also who they were trying to save was so cool. Moana S tier.
2001 to the barefoot hobo in the broken overalls.
Hey, that's me!
I already liked the original, and now with the longer runtime paired with the fact that they have the entire internet to work with instead of just a few arcade games, this movie is set up to blow away the original. Yeah, they fumbled this movie by making Ralph an unbearably clingy person, and with so many "how do you do, fellow kids" moments. Also the fact that they need to make $27,000 in 24 hours, and they said the best way to do that was through YouTube? Yeah, you. The Frozen 2, basically Frozen got the Mistlands update. This movie felt very odd to me, like they were trying to work towards something, but no one knew exactly what they were looking for. But other elements in the movie were really cool, like the fire spirit, the earth giants, along with history being told through the memory of water. One thing I hated about this movie was something they did in a previous movie. From the start of the movie, Kristoff is planning on proposing, and it just keeps getting interrupted. So it's a long-running joke throughout the whole movie. It's just constantly teasing you, like, is he gonna propose? And he just never gets to. On top of that, I seriously dislike Anna and Kristoff's relationship. He seems nervous around his own girlfriend, and she misinterprets and gets offended by everything he says. Plus, when they both thought the other person had left them behind and just dipped on each other, I genuinely wanted them to break up. Also, Elsa relearned the same lesson she did from the first movie about not needing to push Anna away, and it really hurt the plot having her go through the same character arc she's already had. On the other hand, after a second movie with Elsa in it, I feel pretty confident in saying, when it comes to Disney movies, Idina Menzel is easily their strongest singer. Frozen 2 goes in B tier. The whole different cultures being at war with each other theme was done really well, and I personally found it really cool. Plus, we get a different kind of main character in this movie in the form of Raya. Main characters have growth to go through, or if they're a fighter, they have training they need to go through. Not Raya. We're introduced to her as a level-headed, talented fighter. Sisu, the Last Dragon, is an important character who is also supposed to act as our comedic relief and voice of reason when it comes to trust in others. Only problem is, the voice of reason ain't so reasonable. She thinks you have to trust everyone no matter what. She's literally betrayed and still doesn't admit some people can't be trusted. She is attacked by Namaari multiple times and still tries to work with her. Namaari then shoots and kills Sisu for literally no reason. And when everyone else sacrifices themselves, believing in her, she tries to abandon them. But yeah, sure, let's keep giving her more chances. Another B tier.
Who is Hernando?
I'm Hernando and I'm scared of nothing.
This is Disney's best work, and I won't be hearing otherwise. The magic they possess was really interesting to learn about. The living house was a fun touch. The characters are all amazing, starting with our main girl, Mirabel. She puts up a facade in front of everyone, and she's trying to convince them that she's not jealous about not having a gift, and she's almost able to convince even herself. Her sister Luisa, being the oldest with the gift of strength, she bears every burden without showing weakness because she's the oldest, and if she won't, who will? Her song Surface Pressure genuinely gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. Her singing about being the oldest and never trying to show fear or emotion because of it seriously gets to me. Then there's Isabella, blessed with beauty and the power to make flowers bloom wherever she wants and is considered perfect by everyone around her. This causes her to seem stuck up, yet once again, like the two prior, her initial appearance is no more than a facade, and it isn't that she can't fail, it's that she's terrified to, and she doesn't want to disappoint her family by ruining her image. Bruno being hyped up as some devious villain, only to actually just be a normal goofy uncle who had to leave to protect others, was a very good twist. So, with the question remaining of who's the villain, who's breaking their miracle, the answer isn't so simple. Abuela can be considered the villain, but I disagree. She was the person who put stress on the magic, but she only did it because the magic was the only thing she had left of her lover. If their miracle died, he sacrificed himself for nothing, and she slowly lost sight of what was important. In trying to save her family, she was the one damaging it. But I don't think this makes her a villain. More so, she's just someone who made a mistake because she was confused. The villain in this movie is the unfair burdens we place on those we care about and how easily we can alienate those we love.
What in the...
Oh, strange world. We finally made it to the end. And to be honest, I was kind of sad that this was it for Disney movies, because some of these movies really can have such a magic about them. This movie did a lot while not doing much at all, if that makes sense. We're introduced to a very wide range of characters, yet none of them have very much depth or growth throughout the movie. And we're introduced to an entirely new world with a completely new and never before seen ecosystem, yet there's so few new creatures, and even less that are actually interacted with. I also found this movie to drag quite a bit in the middle, but the reveal about the world that they were in at the end was very cool. And I feel like it's only fitting that the last movie ends up in the overcrowded B tier. And there you have it, every Disney movie ranked. With the ranking finished, I kind of wanted to take some time and award certain movies or characters completely outside of the ranking, and more so just were kind of my personal favorites. Starting with favorite side character and the runner-up. Runner-up is Fagin from Oliver and Company. He is a good man who can make bad decisions and is just trying to get his life together. It's really hard to not like this guy. My favorite side character goes to the biggest hater in all of Disney, Roger from 101 Dalmatians. His generational hating is truly inspiring stuff. Next, we'll do runner-up for favorite deuteragonist, with it being Prince Naveen. I can't help but like overly cocky, yet somehow endearing male characters. Plus, he gets handsome points. Favorite deuteragonist is me. Flynn Rider. The character I can relate myself to the most in all of Disney, and not just because of the silly reasons, but also he spoke of his dreams of wealth and the fact that the person he fell for was someone who he met through coincidence with no intention of romance yet ended up in love. Plus the fact he never uses his real name and instead goes by a nickname. They literally just copied me as a character. He's become my overall favorite character in Disney, regardless of role in the film. Next is favorite Disney princesses, with the runner-up being Rapunzel from Tangled. She's adorable and always sees the good in others. And for my favorite Disney princess, it's Princess Eilonwy from The Black Cauldron. She's just such a lovable character, and she's my favorite part of one of my favorite Disney movies. Can't forget about the villains. My runner-up is Tamatoa from Moana, for not only being menacing, but he's actually funny. As for my favorite villain, I feel it's obviously Silver. I spent so much time talking about him and his relationship with Jim, it wouldn't be right to put anyone else here. Now, main character. Main characters have a lot of overlap with the princesses, but I'm doing them separately because I don't personally believe a character like Mulan or Pocahontas count. Even though they're considered to be Disney princesses, they don't actually hold the title of princess. Runner-up, Quasimodo. He's a talented man with nothing but love in his heart for humankind who learns to love himself despite the evil things he was unfortunately forced to endure. His resolve and never wavering care for others is inspiring and admirable. As for my favorite main character, yeah, it's still Mulan. She's just so awesome. I seriously can't say enough good things about her. Can't talk Disney without addressing the music. So I'll be counting down my top 5 favorite Disney songs. Number 5, I've Got a Dream from Tangled. It was not only funny, but also heartwarming to see the room full of hardened criminals go from being intimidating to singing about their dreams at an almost childish level of giddiness. Number 4, Surface Pressure from Encanto is a weird one for me because I've never really had a Disney song resonate so strongly with me before. Normally, I can appreciate the meaning behind the lyrics or relate a bit to them, but this song hits home, with constantly trying to put up a fake appearance and acting like everything is fine, even when it isn't, and I'm sure countless people also related. Now, number 3, Let It Go from Frozen. I already broke down why I believe this to be Disney's best work when it comes to a song, and although I found it to be the best at what it does, it falls to 3rd place because the 2 songs ahead of it get personal brownie points for one reason or another. Number 2, Reflection from Mulan. Seriously, go rewatch this scene and really listen to the song. The singing is absolutely gorgeous. Plus, it's one of the biggest reasons I fell in love with Mulan as a character. The way she's shown to let her fears and insecurities control her to such an extent she can't even recognize herself in her own reflection made her feel so human to me. Because so many people change themselves to be who they think others want them to be. Along with the fact Mulan is a childhood favorite, this song was almost my number one. Now what is number one is Where You Are from Moana. Yeah, I just love Moana and rewatched this movie a bunch of times, and this song is just so groovy. There's no deeper meaning behind its placement like the other 4 songs. It's just really fun, and I like it a lot. Most underappreciated film. I feel this is easily going to the Black Cauldron, as I've never heard anyone talk about this movie, and I seriously loved watching it and became attached to so many characters. Most unique film. Lilo and Stitch. Mostly because we see the entire story play out through the perspective of the villain. I mean, Stitch is the bad guy. And it was also unique that the story wasn't about an adventure, it was just about a broken home. And for the last award, I'll simply count down my 3 favorite Disney films. Number 3, Oliver and Company. Number 2, Moana. I know, my favorite got bumped. What could it be? Oh man, is number 1 Encanto, the movie that I said was Disney's best work? What a shocker. So, I don't really know how to wrap this movie up. So, I'm just gonna say this video took more effort than it was worth, but if you watched it, I appreciate it a lot, and I thank you sincerely. Bye-bye.